I understand the impulse to reboot beloved video game series. No, don't stop watching the video, I promise. I'm about to make a point. See, every property has a shelf life. However well a classic video game franchise is regarded, the fact is that the medium will quite happily move on without it. One way to keep classic series relevant is to reinvent them, allowing them to grow and take advantage of new hardware, new trends, and new design philosophies. Sure, you could just make a sequel, but where's the fun in that? The truly brave thing to do would be to stop the series dead in its tracks and start all over again. Of course, the existence of a list like this one makes it clear that reboots are not always the critical and commercial success stories that developers intend them to be. In fact, sometimes they are rebooted so poorly that they end up having to be rebooted once more, several years later, just to save face. Basically, prepare to get angry all over again as we discuss beloved franchises that were twisted into unrecognizability by the hands that once nourished them. You ready? Let's look at some! I'm Ben from Triple Jump, and here are the 10 worst attempts at rebooting video game franchises. Number 10. Dungeon Keeper, 2014. EA, the reason we can't have nice things. Don't worry, this won't be the last time we hear from them today. Electronic Arts went on a spending spree in the mid to late 90s, hoovering up promising game studios with all the ferocity of Nunu from the Teletubbies on cocaine. Maxis, DreamWorks Interactive, and ultimately Bullfrog Games were all scooped up by the corporation. And while it started well enough, the evil of EA slowly festered over the years until it crescendoed around 2010. They bought Chilingo, Firemint, and PopCap and went all out to destroy once great franchises with microtransaction-filled mobile games. Dungeon Keeper, or Dungeon Keeper Mobile, as it's often called if you want to get mobile about this, same way. So I will. Command & Conquer Rivals, SimCity Build It, Heroes of Dragon Age, and Burnout Crash. It's not that EA are the only ones to reduce once great series to money fountains. Atari, for instance, did it with Roller Coaster Tycoon. Atari doesn't consider that game a reboot, which means it doesn't count for the purposes of this list, but the important thing is that we can all hate it in spirit. Number 9. Star Fox Zero. The Wii U. Part clunky gimmick, part name that sounds like it's offering to perform a very specific fetish. We don't kink shame here at Triple Jump, but we do gimmick shame. The Wii U controller had its own built-in screen. It was like the Nintendo DS, only 1,000 times less convenient. This screen was one of many reasons Star Fox Zero was so mediocre. The game plays it safe and feels like a rehash of what came before, but the main problem is that you have to constantly shift your focus between the TV and the screen you're holding in your hands. Twin screens worked with the DS because they were both within sight, but here it's remarkably disorientating. You'll need a moment each time to get your bearings, and by that point you've already been blasted several times. Admittedly, there are games that are miles worse than this one, but Star Fox Zero could have been so much more. Like many other games on the Wii U, it just felt like Nintendo wasn't trying. Number 8. The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning, and Crash of the Titans. It can sometimes be easy to forget that Spyro and Crash aren't from the same series. The characters are often referenced together, and that's been the case since they swapped secret demos. There was a hidden Crash Bandicoot Warped demo in the first Spyro, and vice versa. Oh, and there was this crossover too. It was naff. Additionally, the franchise is rebooted at roughly the same time. The Legend of Spyro: A New Beginning released in 2006, giving Spyro a new look and sparks the attitude of a sassy teen. Crash of the Titans followed a year later and conveniently set the bar within the first 20 seconds.
Hey, that was a good one!
Absolutely horrid. Both reboots also adopted different gameplay styles. Spyro changed from being platform-centric to focusing on combat. That's exactly what I wanted from my platformer, less platforming. Crash, on the other hand, abandoned its roots entirely and became a beat-em-up with a focus on taking control of Titans with a technique called jacking while collecting mojo. And that is not something I'd care to explain any further. Number 7. Alone in the Dark, 2008. Alone in the Dark 2008 is remembered more for its fire effects than anything else. That says everything, really. Imagine the only reason you remembered Metal Gear Solid 2 being its melting ice cubes. For a game that tried to do a lot, it achieved very little. The combat, plot, driving... In fact, there's no point listing all the parts it got wrong, so I'll just mention what it did right. Well, I've already mentioned the fire. It had good ideas, maybe. The original Alone in the Dark was a pioneer, and as some of the comments on our 10 games that started their own genre video rightly pointed out, deserves its place alongside Sweet Home, Resident Evil, and Silent Hill as one of the games that defined the survival horror genre. The 2008 reboot does not. It was, however, a very worthy inclusion on Worst Games Ever. Oh, and Atari tried to ban bad reviews and only released them from embargo if they were positive. Somehow, that backfired. I know, I was surprised as well. Number 6. Golden Axe Beast Rider. The phrase arcade classic is thrown around a lot these days, but Golden Axe definitely qualifies for the title. The reboot, however, is as far from a classic as you can get. It had a tumultuous development cycle, and what finally released was a jumbled mess. It's similar to the Alone in the Dark reboot in that everything it attempted, it failed. However, Golden Axe Beast Rider trumps Alone in the Dark by not even having any good ideas to begin with, so well done. While it kept the magic, beast riding and hack and slash elements from the arcade games, this reboot was the first in the series to be in 3D. It will also, most likely, be the last in the series. There is technically another reboot that is. Number 5. Homefront: The Revolution. The concept of Homefront: The Revolution is a fascinating one. It's not technically a sequel to the first Homefront as it doesn't follow the story, but rather it plays out in an alternate universe. In essence, it's a sort of remake or reimagining, but also it's not, as Revolution completely ignores the first game, hence why it's considered a reboot? I think. It's all unnecessarily confusing. I'm calling it a reboot. Yell at me. Anyway, Homefront: The Revolution attempted to reboot a series of one game that only came out 5 years before. It also managed to be worse than that game in pretty much every way. Outside of a smorgasbord of technical problems, the biggest issue is that it's unbelievably, painfully, Desmond Milesingly boring. By 2016, it was thought that the spree of generic first-person shooters was on its way out. Good reboots such as Doom appeared that year and shook up the status quo, only for Homefront: The Revolution to ironically end the revolution and put things back as they were. Number 4. Bomberman Act Zero. This is Bomberman. Isn't he lovely? A simple, cutesy video game character from the 80s. This is Bomberman from Act Zero. Can you see the problem yet? Why this pleasant, maze-based strategy series needed a gritty reboot, I have no idea. The game follows the usual Bomberman premise. You navigate a maze-like grid, dropping bombs and trying not to blow yourself to pieces. The main feature of Bomberman Act Zero, though, is a fundamentally stupid one in every conceivable way. It's called First-Person Battle, which is already nonsensical as it's actually third-person. In this mode, you gain a health bar, removing the usual one-hit death associated with the series. I assume that's because the camera is so irreparably broken that you would consistently kill yourself without it, and it was just a cheap workaround. Thankfully, the game's title already gave us a justified score out of 10. That's what I call forethought. Number shop, Space Raiders should never have left the drawing board. Space Invaders was released in 1978 for arcades, and naturally, as it was so incredibly early in the medium's history, it's hardly the most up-to-date concept to base a new game around. Putting it in third person and making it an over-the-shoulder shooter just highlights how little the original game fits in with modern design conventions. Was it really worth updating Space Invaders to the point that it bore no resemblance to the original in any way? Well, maybe. Nintendo Power said it was well executed and just as much fun as in the early 80s. Nintendo Power would never lie to us. I take it all back. Number 2. SimCity 2013. I told you would not heard the last from EA. As part of the company-mandated decimation of beloved franchises, SimCity got a full reboot in 2013. It was online only, had terrible DRM, tried to force multiplayer interaction, and had considerably smaller maps than the previous games. It also included broken pathfinding, an illogical economy, and oh so many glitches! What's more, we're not even listing all the features it cut from previous games in the series, so, you know. It was so bad, it even pushed Paradox Interactive to the forefront of the genre. Their Cities in Motion series had always played second fiddle to SimCity, but their newest game, Cities Skylines, offered disgruntled SimCity fans everything they'd previously wanted from EA. As it turns out, giving fans what they ask for rather than doing what they plead repeatedly with you to stop doing is good business sense. Who could have guessed? Number 1. Sonic the Hedgehog 2006. More commonly known as Sonic 06, this terrible title suffers from the most fundamental of reboot sins, sharing the same name as the original, making googling it slightly more of a hassle. Okay, that may be the least offensive thing this reboot does, but it's still irritating. Alright. More meme than game nowadays, Sonic 06 is up there as one of the most famous blunders in gaming history. It's broken, repetitive, ugly, and the plot plays out like self-insert furry fanfic. The terror of Sonic 06 is common knowledge at this point, and to truly get into it would take a lot longer than we have today. But there's also another Sonic reboot that further solidifies the character's spot at the top. sort of. Some say reboot, some say spin-off. It depends on your viewpoint. One thing we can surely agree on, however, is that Sonic Boom is rubbish. So even if we somehow excluded the legendarily awful Sonic 06 from the running, that mistreated Blue Hedgehog would still end up in the #1 spot. So, congratulations, Sega, I suppose.